Before we get into today's episode, just a bit of context. Employee engagement is something many organizations talk about, but often only measure once a year. In this conversation, we explore what engagement really means today, why traditional approaches fall short, and how leaders can think about engagement as something continuous rather than reactive. I'm joined by Alex Moutal from Clarity Wave, and together we look at engagement through a leadership and insight lens. Let's get into it. Hello and welcome to another episode of the People Podcast in the special series on employee engagement. I am joined by Alex from Clarity Wave. Thank you so much, Alex, for joining the People Podcast and giving your time to us and the listeners. So, Alex, before we get on to our conversation, if you could introduce yourself to the listeners, and also if you could introduce Clarity Wave to listeners in my part of the world who have not heard about what Clarity Wave is.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you very much, Naseer, for inviting me. And Clarity Wave started 13 years ago because I have the Häagen-Dazs franchise in Mexico. I have that business. We had it already for the last 30 years. And what happened to us is that we were like the king of the town for like 10 years or so, because we were in a niche that it was really cool in Mexico to be. It wasn't a fast food type of environment, but it wasn't high service and high demand. So it was a nice niche for the younger generation. But then Starbucks came into play in Mexico. And when they came, they became the cooler person in town. Exactly. And what happened to us is that we started experiencing something that we didn't experience before, and that was high turnover. A lot of our people started going to Starbucks. Why? Because Starbucks knew that we had a good people. We usually had good capabilities, so they started poaching them, basically.
Wow.
So what I did then was I said, okay, what is Starbucks offering? And I will offer exactly the same, right? And problem solved. But it didn't work that way, right? I noticed that we became a Me Too instead of a original. And that it did stop the bleeding, but it didn't solve it. So after looking a lot into what the solutions that were at that time in the market, we found that there weren't any solutions that actually worked for us. So that's when I started looking at this journey and started thinking about creating Clarity Wave. So that's more or less how we became into it.
And I think just to highlight there, my relationship with Clarity Wave, I was just trying to count how many years that was when I initially brought in when Clarity Wave was epic.
Yeah.
And the relation started out, 12 years ago, if I'm not actually mistaken, 12 years ago, one of the organizations I was working in Dubai, we brought in Clarity Wave, and as I said, those days was the epic days. It stuck into my head. I said epic days because it's epic. Everything was, have you done the epic survey? And that's when the journey actually began. And then when I decided to give Ethos of HR another chance, I did not hesitate to contact yourself and Robert to say, well, listen, guys, I want to get back onto that bandwagon of bringing in Clarity Wave. So thank you very much for giving that. But I think it's quite interesting that what you've mentioned is it's sometimes out of, I wouldn't use the word desperation, but I would use the word out of need. You come out with a a magical solution. And then you look back at that days and say, well, I did enjoy a lot of ice cream, but now it's time to, uh, get
Exactly.
this. And I also know that they are quite a big partner of yours. Hagen that are still using Clarity Wave as
Absolutely.
their survey. So thank you very much. So I think it just leads me really well to my first question to you, and that's about employee engagement as a term. We hear that so much everywhere, but it often is quite different for different people. It's not the same. People think it's just talking, but from your perspective, because as you said, you've been in this industry now for a good 30 years, is what does a good employment engagement actually look like in practice?
That's a great question. First of all, a lot of people think that employee engagement is like happy employees. And I don't think that's really the definition. Employee engagement for me is when people actually are willing to invest their time, their thinking, their effort, and everything into the company. They're not just doing it because it's a job. They're not
Yes.
just doing it because it's a transaction, right? It's not a transactional stuff. It has to have more into it. They invest more into it. So that's one of the main difference that I see. So when you have people that are engaged, you have people that are not silent,
All right.
that are willing to participate, are willing to take risks, are willing to disagree with you, are willing to put objectives and actually follow through, right? So I always look at it as there's two types of teams, right? Teams that have to be pushed, and when you have to be pushed, you are not as engaged, and teams that pull actually, that they
Mm,
do a lot of the pulling. So when they're doing the pulling, you have to definitely have an engaged team to do the pulling.
yes. And I think that's quite important again. It's the word when we talk about engagement. People actually just think it's a survey. It's something which is, you know what, I'm going to be engaged with my employees by sending them a annual engagement survey, and they get quite excited about that. They celebrate a week before, and then they send out this engagement survey. But why do you think organizations are still relying so much on the annual engagement surveys, and also uh, especially when the work is changing and leadership is changing? Why do you think people are still quite, or not, I shouldn't say people, I should say organizations are quite happy to have a annual survey?
Well, the first thing is probably they're used to it, so they are not looking into it. And the way that I see the yearly survey, it's like an autopsy more
Mm,
than a medical monitor, right? That's
right.
the difference. Like you always see it uh, a year, the year passes, and you're working with data that it's not accurate, that it's not fresh and moving. So I think that a lot of those companies that use a yearly survey, they do it more as a check mark
Mm,
in their process, more than the actually understanding of what engagement means. And
actually,
what happens a lot with those companies is that the people that actually do the survey, they don't see anything about it. They don't understand why they did it for, what changed, what didn't change. So they just see it as a procedure, right? It's something
yes.
that one more thing that I have to do.
Have to do.
It's not,
Exactly,
okay,
yes.
I'm doing it because I'm actually helping forming
Someone.
this culture or becoming part of the culture. That never happens with a yearly survey. And the other part is that it's like taking a picture instead of a movie of the company.
Right.
So you only take a picture and you try to make it a sense of it, but a picture may tell you a
One
beautiful
side, yeah.
picture, or
Uh,
it could be really bad, but it
yes.
really doesn't tell the whole thing. So that's what companies that take that picture and frame it for the year and they think that that represents them, it's really limited.
And I think
So,
that again, correctly mentioned, is more to do with probably what used to happen 5 years or 10 years ago. You know, it's the old school way of thinking is you can do an annual survey, you ask 50 questions, uh, and then when the reports come back, you theme it yourself. You know, you can theme them to say, "Oh, we are an engaged organization," or "You are a uh, good, you got good leadership." But I think if we have to change that mentality, you know, if you have to change going into organizations today and say you do an annual survey, how would you think employee engagement would be different today compared to what used to happen? And how do we tell that to the leaders?
oh, first of all, for me, doing it that way is like, let's pretend for a minute that I would like to lose some weight. Okay.
Right.
And we're just starting the year. So let's pretend that I have a resolution to lose 10 pounds, right? And I only measure myself once in the year, and I will measure next year and see what happens. The probability for me to actually lose that weight will be very slim.
Yes.
Now, let's do it the way that we do it, for example, and let's say that I want to lose those same 10 pounds, but I'm every week
Right.
measuring
Yes.
myself in a scale. So just by doing that, I already have a different consciousness. I already have a different set. It's always there as part
Mm,
of something important. And it's not something that, well, I will check it out next year or whatever. Right. So that by itself gives you more improvement. But if on top of that, you, I hire a trainer, I go to the gym, I go
yes.
to a nutritionist, and I
All of
take all those things, then I start increasing my rate of success. But if you are really understanding what engagement gives you and what engagement doesn't give you, because a lot of people think that it gives you something that it doesn't give you, right? And they are trying to think, trying to make it look as if engagement is having a great office with great
mm,
gadgets and cafeteria and stuff like that. And yeah, that's part of making people happy. But when you do have engagement, you don't need all that stuff. All you need is people that actually are invested
yes.
in your proposal, in your mission, are part of your tribe. They're not just, and in order to do that, and when you see that, it's a must that you have to measure it continuously, because you have to see where your threats are, where
Yes.
you, and
Correct.
when your opportunities as well.
And I think that leads me really well to the next question I had is in your experience, you've now been in this engagement, well, a part of your business on engagement. In your experience working with organizations, what do you think are the earliest signs when organizations start looking that the engagement levels are falling or declining in their organizations? What are those earliest signs that organizations can see?
First one, and this is sad because it's most of the time it's since the beginning, so they don't notice, is silence.
Right.
Silence is a killer in organizations. When people are not willing to talk, willing to engage in conversations, willing to get involved with the project.
Mm,
That's the number one thing, right? But you have to look at it into at least four factors that we use. We have a radar in our system that helps us look at. And the first one is execution, right? If people have all the tools, all the knowledge, all the culture ability to actually execute without having to look for your leader or your boss or whatever. The second one is a turnover rate. If you have a high turnover rate, you probably don't have a tribe. So you
mm,
probably are low on engagement. Then you have the silent quitting. people, right? All that silent
Yes,
quitting.
quietly, yes.
Yeah, what it means is that people are just doing the bare minimal to maintain their jobs. So
Yes.
that's actually not engaged, right? I'm just doing whatever I need
Mm,
not to lose, but I'm not really doing to win. And that's the important part. And the fourth part is the burnout, right?
yes.
When you have people that they are overworked or that they think that they are overworked, because when you're not engaged, you will not work as hard and you will feel
True.
everything much
Very true.
more.
Mm,
So when they are in that state, that makes it even worse, that engagement rate, right? That they will say, okay, I need a vacation or I just need to unplug. And then when they are overworked, what it will happen is two things most of the time. They either do silent quitting, which is
yes.
the most costly for the organization because
Organization.
you start losing there a lot of possibilities, or they quit. They actually quit. And when they actually quit, you think that it's because they had a better opportunity, but it's more about the experience that they had and all that, the need that they
Yes.
didn't fulfill when they were in that job.
And I think you've just hit the nail on the head. And when you've just given the 4 points, I think any organization who does any kind of survey, you will find these 4 points somehow being the top. And I think now you will find more often than not the words which I don't think 5, 10, 15 years ago people actually uh, used the word burnout. They were like, well, no, that's your job. You're getting paid to do that work. Or silent quitting never existed because I don't think anyone ever bothered. You quit, you quit. That doesn't mean that I decipher and say, oh, well, the guy, well, he gave me signs that he wanted to quit. But, and, and, and then that again, to the next question to you, and then this is
And
something which I also
may I
picked.
add
Sorry.
something
Yeah, yeah, sure,
about what
yes.
you just said? And one of the big things there is that society and technology has really changed a lot the way that we see stuff. So, like, I'm a Generation X, okay? And the way that we used to go and look for a job is virtually completely different than the
Yes,
way
of
that
course,
you
yes.
apply for a job today. First of all, you
Yeah.
have LinkedIn, which is a constant way of putting
Networking.
yourself
Yeah,
out, right? And
yes,
saying, hey, I'm
yes.
here. If you have a better
Let me
option,
know. Yeah.
give me a ring and that thing. And the way that we used to look at our jobs were, okay, if you tend to go for more than 3 or 4 jobs in your lifetime, there's something wrong with you,
Yes,
right? There's like you're not finding either your niche or
yes,
there's something weird going on. And now it's completely the opposite. Now, the youngest generation, they are 20 something and they have already been to
three,
five
four
or
jobs
six
already.
jobs
Yes.
exactly.
They don't
So,
like it, they're out. Yeah.
so the terms of burnout and exhaustion and all that, they are also they they have to do with the new
Mm-hmm.
mentality, right?
Yes.
The new way people act, the new generations. So, like what you said, before we didn't have the terms, but we didn't have the symptoms of that.
Yes.
We
We
were
didn't.
used to a different type of mentality, different way of
Exactly.
work, and it
Yes.
was just the way it was. But now
And I think,
it's not.
yeah, the workforce has changed. And I use the word resilience quite a lot nowadays. And I say people like us are naturally resilient because we've seen how work used to happen 20, 25 years ago. And when you just mentioned about how you used to apply for the job, one of the jobs I applied actually was the first job I applied in the heat of Dubai, is when my brother dropped me off on the first hotel. There used to be this huge stretch, and he dropped me off at the first hotel on the last end. And he said, start from there, drop your CV off, and continue with all the hotels on that stretch, and I
Hmm.
will see you at the last hotel. So, and now, as you said, people are just say, "Oh, I'm looking, I'm open to opportunity," and I think with that again, that's mindset. What you've correctly mentioned, and you've also mentioned about technology, which exists now. But what role do you think the leadership of the organization, their behavior play in engagement? Because they think number one, engagement should be the responsibility of HR. They should do the survey. They should present an action plan. But I think, as you mentioned just now, that the workforce is changing and the mentality is changing. So what role do you think now the leadership plays, or what's their behavior when it comes to engagement? What should it be?
Well, it's essential, like they say, right? People don't quit their jobs.
They
They
quit
quit their
manager.
boss. Yeah, they quit their bosses, right? So leadership needs, first of all, to understand that how the mentality have shifted, what new
Yes.
generations actually are craving, and they are craving to have a purpose, right? Because one of the things that the new generations are losing with all these technological changes, social media, and all that, is what's my purpose? So when they feel like they don't know what their purpose is, they start getting a lot of entitlements, right?
Mm.
They should give me this. I should be here because that's what they hear in their social media. That's what they hear from a YouTuber and so on. But when they do have a defined purpose, and leadership is actually leading people,
Yes.
right, to their career path, letting them know exactly why they're getting recognition, and often giving that recognition, and at the same time giving them straight feedback, useful feedback, not just a complaint, but really feedback that they can actually take
Take
into
it forward. Yes.
consideration.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then leadership becomes a mentorship, right? Which is what younger generations are craving. So when you have
Mm.
a strong leadership team, will define the strong culture, and that will create a tribe that wanna stay there regardless of the job.
I think you've correctly stated all the points which were in my head when I was actually speaking to someone, and they mentioned, well, we need to hire this leader, and the questions they've put in the interviews were based on their job. So I asked this question: is how are you assessing this person with people skills? How are you assessing that this leadership position? There is a reason why it's called a leadership position, is because it's leading a set of people, and none of the questions you've asked were about people. How uh, and I think engagement, people, if they want to think I'm crazy or what, but in my head, I think engagement is quite high in what makes a good leader. Uh, if even if they say, well, you know what, yeah, it's a part of their job. I don't think it's a part of their job. It's actually something really so important that it defines leadership. And I think that is something which you've mentioned. People need to start realizing and evolving. I think that's a good word we need to constantly use, is evolving uh, into what is required to be a true leader and how they use engagement as a tool. Uh, and then that perfectly leads me in this lovely question I've got for you is evolve. You evolve with time. Now, how is Clarity Wave different from all the other traditional engagement surveys which are out there, which are annual or twice a year? And what the organizations are already using, and sometimes they're just happy with it. But if I have to say, uh, what is Clarity Wave unique selling point? Why is it different?
Great question. We we like to think of ourselves as a tool, that it's like a Swiss army that
Yes.
has different tools in that tool
The
set,
army
right?
knife, the famous
The
army
army
knife we've
knife,
got. Yes.
exactly, exactly. And we have three main areas that we are working on with our customers, right? The first one has to do obviously with engagement and culture and transforming your culture and creating a good environment for people to thrive in that culture, right? The second one has to do with team building and making teams be as autonomous as possible. That what we're doing there is we're finding what makes that team click and
Mm.
what that and try to make that getting bigger, better, and stronger. And we work a lot with teams to become more cohesive, more productive, more autonomous. And that at the end helps companies be more profitable, right? And the
Yes.
third part that that we work on has to do with productivity. So and that's like the last part, right? We see this as building a house. You don't start with the roof, you start with
The
the
foundations.
flooring, right?
Yes.
The
Yes. Yes.
foundations. And the last part has to do with productivity. And we work with objectives. We use a methodology of OKRs and all that.
Yes.
And we also have all the performance testings and everything that has to do that. We measure a lot of the emotional intelligence of
Mm.
everybody in the corporation, so they can see how they are, not only how they are feeling, but how they are impacting others. So they will
Right.
be able to see if that person, first of all, I will be able to see if my
Mm.
actions are impacting in a good way or if they are impacting in some other way that it's affecting other people. And
Right.
also the leadership will be able to see that and work with me to help me solve those issues. So
Right.
we work on those three areas. And what happens is that at the end of the day, you end up having a clear culture, because the other thing that a lot of people miss out is that cultures need to be really, really strong. The
Mm.
stronger, the better. Meaning that if you come into that place and you look at it and you want to go and work for them, you need to figure out in the first 5 minutes if you're part of that tribe or if you're
Only
not
another
part of
way.
that tribe.
Yes.
And a lot of companies try to go into one size fits all, right? They try to involve everybody, and I completely disagree with that. I think that you
Mm.
should have a culture that anybody could understand and smell it a mile away. So we work with that first. Then we work within that culture to generate high performance teams.
Mm.
And then we measure and give you enough tools for your teams and your company to actually perform. So it's more
So
than just an engagement and culture
it's a
survey.
package. It's a package which will
Absolutely.
probably could, if you have to put it in a statement, a package which will define the culture of the organization.
Hmm.
Now that can be defined as any other way, uh, and also something really different from clarity way from other surveys is scores. They don't look at scores, but they look at drivers. They look at the 6 drivers you've got. Uh, can you quickly explain what those drivers are and why do you think they matter in today's engagement world?
So again, those drivers have to do with the experience of the people when they are doing their job. So the first driver has to do with if I have all the tools, the basic needs, right? They cover the first needs, which is, do I have everything to do my job? And do I have all the knowledge? Not only
Mm.
the tools, but the knowledge, right? How it was my induction. Did they give me all the material? Did they give me everything to do the job? Then the second driver has to do with the individual. How am I
Right.
feeling doing that stuff? Do I have a
Mm.
clean, safe, engaging place, culture to do the things that I'm supposed to do? So that also will help the individual figure out if they are actually succeeding with all that, right? And then
Mm.
you have the managerial need. Do I have enough supports with leadership? Do they give me enough goals, enough feedback, enough tools to improve, etc.? And then I have contribution needs. because it's really important to know that we are contributing to something beyond ourselves, right? And then we have, are we part of something? Need, right? If we are actually being part of, and if I if I get out of this job tomorrow, am I gonna be missed, or it's just another number and the next one up, right? Mentality.
Yeah.
So, and the last one has to do with your career opportunities and growth needs. So it works with how much effort does a company put in nurturing you, in giving you a precise path to achieve your goals, and explaining what's working, what is not working, what you need to be doing if you want to grow in the company.
Right. Uh, yeah, when a basic answer that is what's in it for me. The answering that question, people really,
Absolutely.
struggle to answer is what's in it for me? Why should I work? And I think this is really helpful. I said we used Clarity Wave again, epic days I used to call it, but Clarity Wave 10 years ago, 12 years ago. So we're coming in at a stage where employee engagement probably was just starting. And one of the
Hmm.
things I remember, because we were a part of another organization and they were quite happy with their annual engagement. And when we brought in Clarity Wave, one question was common to say, well, uh, every week, do we have to answer the questions every week? And I said, not just every week. You actually have to go in every day. You need to go in and log in and say how you're feeling today. What's the environment like? What's the weather like? Those two beautiful questions which pop up
Hmm.
in the first
Hmm.
thing when you
Hmm.
log on. And I said, no, you have to log in every day. But every week you're going to get questions you will have to answer. So one of the concerns at that time, and even probably today, if we go and introduce something new to people to say, you will have to answer questions on a weekly basis. They're going to be 4 to 5 questions. They raise this question about survey fatigue in the sense that, every week I'm getting a notification that I've got a survey. So how how do you think Clarity Wave will enable that continuous listening without overwhelming employees, without pushing them to say, well, it's time for another survey?
Well, first of all, the fatigue doesn't come from the survey. I think it comes from the silence,
Right.
meaning that it comes from the lack of action. If I'm filling 7 questions or 5 questions a week and nothing happens, nothing improves in
That's
my
important.
life,
Right. Okay.
then I get fatigue, because I'm not getting fatigue from the survey. I'm getting fatigue on, why am I doing this if nobody is doing anything? And a lot of companies, they fail on either two areas or both combined. Number one, they fail into taking action, but the other one, they fail on informing what actions they're taking. So
Yes.
a lot of people, we are really, really bad as humans to see our progress in small amounts, right? Like if you go to and the main example could be going to the gym. If you go to the
Mm.
gym and you go every day to the gym, you don't see the progress every day, right? But if you actually go to the gym every day and you take a picture of yourself the first day that you started and the first month, you will see a difference that
Difference. Yes.
you didn't notice. And then if I give you questions to reflect on, hey, is your health better, your flexibility better, your strength better, then you have something to work with. All
Answer
right.
about.
And
Yes.
and what happens with organizations is that they don't recognize that. So if you just put any survey, whatever it is, even if it's an annual survey or a weekly survey or a daily survey, but you don't show me, you don't take the time to show me what the possibilities are, what the changes
That's
have
the
been.
challenge. Yes.
So if that happens, I will be glad to spend the 2 minutes a week that it takes
Mm.
from me, because you have to work with the reward, right? The fatigue comes when you
Yes.
don't perceive the reward. If you're asking for me to take 2 minutes out of my
Mm.
time, I need to see the reward. And it's not really that much of a reward for 2 minutes, but
No,
psychologically it is.
it is.
Because
Yes.
if I feel like if you're just wasting my time, you're pulling my leg, you're you're clowning around with these questions because nothing happens, it actually makes it worse
Yes.
for the company. So the companies that are willing to measure have to understand that they have to either be good at communicating and actually implementing stuff. And the last thing that I see companies fail is that they think that the implementation and the changes need to be huge. And it's
Mm,
not like that. It needs to be small improvements. Just a little bit better now, then next day. It's just like the exercise example. You don't
yes.
go to the gym and start pulling the weight from the heaviest when you haven't done any gym,
The
any
exercise.
weightlifting at all, right? You do
Yes.
it with a little bit, and then the next day, and then the next day, and then the next month, and so on. But when you look at it, how much have I
Mm,
weigh? How much do I pull up in a year if I go every day? You will be astounded. But we don't
yes.
work like that. Our brain doesn't work like that
Like
because
that.
we're
It's
more in a
different.
survival. Yeah, we're more in a survival mode. So we don't see it that way. So the organization needs to show us that way. So when that happens, it's not a problem. Actually, the stress and the fatigue is a symptom. It's not a problem. It's a symptom that you're not doing something well enough to encourage me to take 2 minutes out of my
To
day.
do it. I think you said that really well, and I remember this when we were setting up Clarity Wave. It was very, you've mentioned at that stage to say, well, listen, you can have reports on a monthly basis if you want your HR director to have your monthly reports quarterly, twice a week. You can set it up. Then we will produce you reports for your executive team on a quarterly basis if they want, or twice a month. And that was the beauty of it is, and what you've mentioned is that gives you that tool to take action quickly, which an annual survey doesn't, because I'm actually not a big fan of annual surveys. It happens once a year. It takes about a month to do it. Then it takes about 2 months to get the report. Then it takes about 2 months for the organization to read the report properly. Then they ask you to create action plans, and that's like 8 months down. And you just have a month to deliver. You don't deliver, and then you say, "Well, welcome back to 26 survey." So I think that fatigue, what you've correctly mentioned, is you need to reward. And the beauty of Clarity Wave, again, you collect points the more you answer. And I remember
Absolutely.
when we said you really can't have, we don't have the budgets to put monetary, monetary rewards. And we said you don't need monetary rewards. You just collect points and say, well, if you collect 200 points, you can leave 2 hours early. You come
Exactly.
back after you collect 500, you get a half a day off. You collect 1,000 points, you get a full day off. So I think that was the reward which you mentioned is really important, as you need to let people know, you don't buy. Okay, some people might say, oh, you're buying their time. No, you're not buying their time. You're rewarding them for the time they've put in, but don't keep that as a tool to think that that's going to increase engagement, but make sure the actions. If you find something which is an easy fix, which has come from your monthly, take action and deliver it. So your engagement levels definitely will increase in the next month, and celebrate it. Shout about it. Go and say, we've done this for you. We've heard you. So I
Yeah.
think that's the difference, isn't it, in the system what you've got with
And
Clarity Wave.
also it's not just a survey, right? Because if you compare it with another survey, you're actually not
You
comparing
will not
apples
get
with
anything. You
apples.
won't. You won't get
Yeah,
anything out of it.
because
Definitely not.
the Clarity Way, what it has a very rich part for recognitions that you
Yes.
can recognize others in real time, one on one. You can also recognize people
In
in
public.
the wall of
Yes.
stars
Yeah. Yeah.
in public. So that really helps and generates a culture of recognition, which is really important
Mm.
and really deficient in a lot of companies. So, like I said, it gives you like that Swiss Army knife that it's much more than just a survey. A yearly survey, it just gives you that. It's just a survey. It gives you a diagnostic, and you have to either put attention into it or not, but that's it. Here it's really like a full uh, system that
On
integrates a lot of
yes, how you
areas.
can.
Yeah.
And I think you've answered this. The next question I've had here is, and you've already answered, but I'm happy we will discuss this a little bit more, because this is what the entire core of our engagement discussion is. You know, on a leader's perspective, as me, for example, or you, and a leadership role in an organization, how do you think Clarity Wave will help that engagement insights which we offer into meaningful actions, rather than those reports, as I said, which come once a year. It takes 2 months to decipher those reports. So how does that on leadership thinking change with Clarity Wave? How can they use the insights from it?
Well, first, what we have in Clarity Wave, we have a risk radar that we call it. So in every department or in every section, every team, you can measure the four aspects that I said. First of all,
Yes.
the ease of execution, right? How if teams are capable of executing without having to need the
Mm,
leader or whatever. Then you have burnout, and it
yes.
tells you actually which people are in danger of
Mm,
becoming more having
burnout.
a greater burnout rate or others. You have the turnover rate as well, so it tells you which people and which departments are getting close to that turnover,
Yes.
and you have the silent quitting as well. So when
Mm,
you combine all that, and it gives you alerts. So when you're a leader and you start seeing a second consecutive period of alerts in, let's say, burnout, it gives you enough information. The tool, of course, right now we are connected with artificial
mm,
intelligence and diagnostics with artificial
yes.
intelligence and all that. So it will help you, guide you through uh, the data, and will explain you, okay, let's say that you are in danger of becoming, your team is becoming a burnout team. All right. It gives you a lot of information on what to do, how
Mm,
to slow it down, how to take the pressure off, how to deal with that situation. So the thing is that when companies are growing and when companies are working, friction is part of the system, right? You
yes.
cannot have growth without friction,
Fiction. No,
and that friction generates situations if you don't address it, right? If you don't put enough oil into the machine for the
it's
parts
not
to
gonna
be
work.
well
No.
oiled, the
Yep.
friction breaks the machine. So
Yes.
you need to know where to put the oil on. And that's more or less what Clarity Wave will do, is that it will show you where the cracks are showing before it becomes a problem. So it's like you see the smoke before the fire
Comes.
really gets
And
out of hand.
I remember now that when you've mentioned about the departments, the reports when we used to generate, we actually used to then break them down into different departments, because we have to add them onto the system that we've got these
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
departments, and these are the employees which are going to be logging on. Uh, And I think that was really, really helpful for the senior leadership team to then actually use that insight, rather than going and sharing it with public and saying, oh, you know what, this department has the highest turnover or highest burnout, not naming and shaming. But I think it was really, really important when we used the same reports for department wise to have what is the word I'm using for? I'm not using for a generic action plan, but a very precise, custom-made action plan for each department who showed different signs. And I think that was something really unique and really helpful in my days when I used to run Clarity Wave in the organization I worked for. And I think that's really a great leadership tool, I would say, is to make, again, as you said, unfortunately, we shouldn't say post-mortem. As you say, post-mortem is at the end of life, and you really, I would say, come in for your monthly health check, and really understand what the problems are and solve it, not wait for another year for the survey to tell you, which you already knew. But as I said, some people just like to wait for the survey to tell them that their pay is not correct, or uh, the benefits are not correct. but we know that. But it's the other things
Absolutely.
which are really important and was really beneficial for us at that stage. So now leading again back to engagement, employee engagement, in your experience, what are the type of organizations uh, tend to benefit the most from Clarity Wave?
It's like everything. Like the paradox of life is that people that usually read books on how to become richer are not homeless people,
Yes.
are
Yeah.
people that already have money usually. So what I'm trying to say is that people that need the most help are the ones that are not willing, ready to receive the help. So when I see organizations that are there like a mess culturally or organizationally, or they have a really high turnover, it's really hard to work with them
Mm,
because the problems are systemic, and they don't understand where the problem is coming from, right? Like Einstein said, you cannot solve a problem from the perspective where it was created. You need a higher level of consciousness to actually make it, right? So if you are, let's put it again in the gym analogy, right? If you are really out of shape and you are really, everything is really out of shape in you, it will be very hard for you to go into the gym and do the work and get in shape and go to the nutritionist and go with the coach, because you are the problem. It's not that the problem happened to you, but you are the problem. And until you are willing to change that, it will be hard. So the best organizations to work with are organizations that are not that far out, but they are understanding that they have some issues to work with, right? But they are willing to increase their level of consciousness, willing to learn, and
mm,
for the system to give you feedback, and they will not take it personal, right? Because one of the things is the, the things that the system will tell you, it tells you without judgment. It doesn't tell you if
yes.
you're right or wrong, if you're
It
doing it
just
right.
yeah.
It just tells you information about it, right? And then you need to process that information. So you need to be ready on how you process it. So yeah, I always recommend companies that are struggling, but not in a way that
Mm,
it's really, really deep, because then you need another type of tool. You need a very close consulting
you need a
partner
whole.
that
I think you
takes
need a
you
whole.
small
Yeah,
steps. And then when you are in that place where you already took out all the baggage,
deliver.
then it works really great.
Yeah.
But if you try to do it as just your first tool when you are a mess, it will be really hard. It seldom works.
So basically, it's at what we say to people is if you're at that transformational stage where you really need external help to come in and sort your problems out, you finish that off. And then if you want to assess how that has that transformation have an impact, that's when you can actually use Clarity Wave as a tool. So,
Exactly. And
you
and just to go, like, people that are overweight usually don't have scales in their home.
of course, yeah.
So
The
it's the
scales to
same
see.
here. So the
Yes.
scale has to come
Oh, it's true.
when you're ready to actually
Yeah.
look at it and use it, right? And if
It's the
they have
same.
it, they seldom use it.
No,
Like
of
even
course.
if they
One,
have it. So you have to be in that position when you're saying, okay, I wanna improve my weight. I wanna
yes.
improve my body. So therefore I have a weight that I'm gonna use it. And the smart weight, the smart scales today, right? It's the
Yes.
same thing.
Yes.
People that are really serious
They
about
need
their
it more.
weight, they have those scales.
Yeah.
People that are not serious, they're not willing to invest for those scales
No,
because it makes no sense.
yeah, they would use it to weigh their baggage when they go for a holiday more than their
Exactly.
own weight. So
Exactly.
I love that analogy. When people will be like really scratching their head right now is you know you have a tool, you don't want to use it. Sometimes it's for me. I feel that way. I really don't want to go to a doctor to get my annual assessment done is because I'm scared. Uh, I know I have a problem, but that's going to come out in a report and then I have to do something about it. Rather than say, no, I want to do it. Let me
Mhm.
go to the doctor, get the report, improve that, and then get on to the next step. So, you know, and I also quite a lot of times tell people about data. I love data. I don't know why. I think data is a language.
Mhm.
And
Mhm. It is.
and I saw firsthand the data which came out from Clarity Wave. But again, that was a few years ago. So I haven't really on hand seen it, but I know the data which used to come out from Clarity Wave. How do you think that the organizations have actually used that to change the behavior or the culture of leadership? If for example, I can just put it out there to say, I've got it now. I know that there is a department A who is really unhappy with the physical uh, availability of their leaders, for example, right? Have you seen organizations, how do you think that the organizations can actually use that uh, data to improve that culture? And did organizations actually use that Clarity Wave data to improve cultures?
Absolutely. And the game changer now is artificial intelligence,
Yes.
right? Because it used to be like if you really like data, you also had to invest a lot of time analyzing that data. And
Yes.
now,
True.
one of the things that artificial intelligence does fantastically is analyzing all that data for you. So, we are using those features to give you a easier, more digested uh,
Right.
reporting that actually helps you deal with the issues. So, for example, what we have because of the artificial intelligence, we have in all our data, we say, okay, this is what could happen now.
Mm.
This is what could happen if you do not address this issue in the short term,
Months,
in the
yeah.
midterm,
Long term.
and in the long term.
Wow.
So it
Nice.
tells you all that, and then it gives you small steps, like what actions can you take right now to improve it, right? So again, in the analogy that you put about the you don't wanting to go to the doctor or anybody, is we're lacking the impact. We don't really know what the probabilities of that impact will generate in the long term.
Correct.
So
Yes.
once you understand that, you tend to move, right?
Yes.
Because if I tell you, hey, I know that you're scared of what you may find, but if having you taken the consideration of this and this and this and this, and that should be enough for anybody to move forward.
Right.
So that's what we're doing with Clarity Way. So if you have an issue of a manager or a leader that it's not physically present in the organization, that may or may not be a problem, right? Because
Yes.
if their team works autonomously without the need of a physical attention, it's great. But if the team doesn't work accordingly because they need to have a physical interaction with their leader, then you have a problem. And
Yes.
when you know that and understand that, actions come by themselves. And if you know, and if the system gives you a clear idea, clear pathway, right, to the actions, then it becomes easier.
And I think, again, then there is no reason for leaders to complain that they don't have the tools, because now they've got everything. They've got the problem. You've defined what the problem is. You've defined the impact in short term, mid-term, long term. And still, if you don't do anything about it, then you as a leader are not in the right seat. I think these tools are
Absolutely.
definitely helpful. And the word you've used there, which I think, again, I've used it a couple of times in the last couple of podcasts I did. I did a podcast on saying AI in HR, because people actually think, oh, well, if AI comes in, our jobs are gone. It's not true. Then we did another podcast on AI in recruitment, which was another something really important. And you've now touched a very interesting topic and one of my favorite topics of artificial intelligence in engagement. So how do you think employee engagement is going to evolve over the next, if I say few years, it's going to be uh, a long-term thing, but because the way technology is evolving, if I say next year, then 3 years, that would be better. So how do you think, or let the years go away, how do you think people engagement is going to evolve moving forward?
Well, first, artificial intelligence will give us a clearer understanding of the data, right? Like I said, you don't need to spend as much time analyzing what the data is telling you, and you don't need to be an expert on
Mm,
everything that the data is giving you in order for you to solve it. So it will give you a clearer picture, and it will make you move faster, right? Like
yes,
companies that actually use that data and know exactly what the probabilities are if they don't take action, that will definitely make them move. It's a better incentive for them
right.
to move faster and get it done. So I think that we are getting into a point where even if you're a small company, the amount of stuff that you can do that you couldn't do before will increment that productivity, right? And it
Yes.
will
Yep.
increment
Yep.
that way of working. So yes, I think right now, at least in the short term, artificial intelligence will make us have better decisions, more decisions for us to work in terms of the working environment. Later on, it's up to what the technology
Howard. Yeah.
comes. Like we don't even know, right? Nobody, I
No.
think, knows. We
No.
are in that verge of
Yes.
the changing is gonna be so significant that we don't know what's gonna come after that.
I'm going to catch you off guard with a question I just popped up in my mind.
Hmm.
Uh, we've got organizations of different sizes, and it's got to do with artificial intelligence. A lot of organizations, smaller organizations, if we say, listen, artificial intelligence is a tool that uh, we're using to go in deeper into results and data which has been produced. So if I say to you, when you say you're wearing the sales hat, you're coming to me, and and I say to you, well, if you're going to do that, I can just create a Microsoft form, Office form, send that to all my employees. They will write that every month. I will not do it week. I get that. I can download the report into an Excel and put that into Copilot and ask Copilot to give me a engagement survey report. Uh, what would you say?
Yeah, what I think is that it's the same as in the scale analogy. If you are serious about weighting yourself, you will have the best scale available in the market to do it. When you're asking those questions, eh, you are not that serious
Right.
about your performance, because when you are serious about the scale, you see everything that the scale will give you, that it will be very hard for an Excel and a
Mm,
Copilot information to give you. It's not just the engagement survey. Like I said, it has a technology around it. It's a, a tool that gives you
yes.
multiple areas, multiple layers.
That's what I
At
wanted
the
to
end of
hear.
the day, yeah, at the end of the day, yeah, you will be able to get it's better than nothing, of course. I mean, you don't need, if you want to know your weight, you don't need the high tech
No, you
scale
don't.
to get your weight. You can do it very simple with a weight with a scale that was invented 200 or 300 years
Yeah,
ago, right?
or
You don't need
a
exactly.
mirror, maybe a clean mirror.
Exactly. But when you are
Serious about
serious
things.
about your health and you get your weight and you get those rings that measure your pulse and you do
BMI, body mass
exactly
index. Yes.
everything, then you're playing in a different league. And that's what you need to understand. You want to play in a different league when it comes to getting better results, more profitable, more less turnover, people that are actually engaged and they're not just telling you that they're engaged, right? And you understand how that looks, because it's very easy to see when you look at it. It's very easy. Are they engaged? Are they willing to do their job or not? Or do I have to push? Or they're willing to pull? So when you have that, you understand that you cannot solve it with ease with a simple scale.
System, yeah, brilliant. I think that's a great answer. So before we end, uh, my last question to you is: if today's leaders who are listening today take one key message away about employee engagement, what should that message be?
That employee engagement is not just becoming happier or being uh, uh, attracted to the place of work and waiting for Monday to come in. It has to do more with actually what we do at work, right?
Mm.
If we are willing to stay in the conversation, we are willing to do things that are not my job or part of my job description, but it's needed. How when you are in that position of creativity and innovation and willingness to take risks, that's and that those are the companies that really grow
Mm.
exponentially, right? We tend to see the Apples, Googles, Disneys of the world as if they were, oh, well, they are engaged or they do that because they are
So,
so big. They can
yeah,
afford it, right?
yeah,
But they don't understand that it was because they took care of that, that they became that
big.
big.
Yeah.
Because of that mentality is why they like, I would tell you, Apple, for example. Apple has the most clear message ever since they
Mm.
started, right? If you
Yes.
go and look at their first advertising, 1994 advertising, that it's a genius, it's a masterpiece. But if you see that and you see the advertising today, it's 100% coherent with their
Yes.
culture, right? They are not they are not confusing their client, their tribe, their people. They're only trying to get 20% of the market. That's
Yes.
it. That's it. At the end of the day, that's what they try with their messaging and everything, right? So that clarity in culture and throughout the years, keeping that clarity in culture is what made Apple Apple. Nothing else at the end
Nothing
of the day.
else. You're right, actually. Alex, thank you so much for the insights you have given today. It was actually more than uh, I think you and I had planned, but I personally have learned quite a lot about
Same here.
the different analogy you've used when it comes to engagement. And probably if I am speaking with anyone who wants to introduce that, I will make sure that I use the same one and nothing else about weighing scales and gyms. And uh, so thank you very much, Alex, for
On the
giving your
contrary,
time.
thank you.
And I really do hope that we come back again for another topic. I am sure we've got so much to talk about employee engagement, and probably the next one will be more about the features of Clarity Wave, but that's for next time. But thank you very much, Alex.
On the contrary, thank you, Nasser.
And that brings us to the end of this episode. The key takeaway is simple. Employee engagement isn't an annual exercise. It's shaped by everyday leadership behavior. If you found this episode useful, follow the People Podcast on Spotify and subscribe on YouTube. Thank you for listening. I'll see you in the next episode.